So in the last video we made, we delved into the backstory of Lingua Franca and, well, your personal life story, the things that you did in order to get the idea. But this idea has gone through many iterations, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So you had this idea, and what happened next?
So my first step was to try to get a team together, and I did get a few people who were eager to make a lot of money because I talked enthusiastically about not just the product in terms of the potential educational benefits, but also the potential financial reward,
What year was this?
Well, 2017. So this was January of 2017, and some people were eager to join, but I think once they realized that they had to work and they had to learn and constantly improve, they left after like a month or two. But I kept recruiting some people, and Emily was one of the first ones that joined the team.
And in February of that year. It was February?
March. It was March. So that was the first thing. I was trying to get the people to really want to put the work that was necessary to build the product. And then the first idea, right, of the product, this is even back before when you joined. This is just really the first idea.
Yeah, I don't think I have any experience with this idea.
It was just supposed to be a computer game of sorts, and it was just supposed to be a still image, in a sense. Like imagine a picture of a living room, and the idea was that you could hover your mouse over certain objects, and you would get like the types of interactions you can have with the object. So if you hovered your mouse over, let's say, a couch, it would give you the options like, sit on the couch, lay on the couch, sleep on the couch, right? And this way you're getting the types of interaction, the verbs associated, and the prepositions associated with that particular object, right?
Right, and one thing this reminds me of is, in schools when they have those little name tags above things. Not very innovative yet.
Yes. But the difference is that you could see the different, there was a variety involved. That was kind of the idea. But yeah, it was very much like a word dictionary where you have a picture and you have like a bunch of words there. But the idea is that you could somehow like interact with it in the sense that you could see sentences associated with those words.
So why did you end up changing this? What was it that made
Because it was a bad idea. That's why.
What about it did you think was bad?
It was very passive. It was very passive, and as you said, like it didn't change much from like a words dictionary, image dictionary, and I used those in the past, and I didn't think they were very effective.
What did you change it to?
Right. So after maybe a month or two, the idea changed to a computer game where it was kind of like 3D. 3D in the sense that it was like it's like just like a computer game. And the idea was that you were going to like begin the game as a baby, as a toddler, and you would progress in the game. Like your language learning progression would be your age progression. So you would experience life as a toddler. So your character would be a toddler in level 1.
This is the version that I was involved with, at least to some degree.
In the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember thinking that this was a very cool idea because you don't normally get this kind of thing within games or within learning in general. And then the way that you presented it was like it's as if you're learning naturally, naturally as a child would learn.
Yeah.
And that was the most interesting thing about it, to me at least.
Yeah. And so, level 2, it was supposed to be 5 levels. Then level 2, you would be like a child. Level 3, you'd be a teenager. I think level 4, you'd be like a late teen, like 16, 18. And level 5, I think you'd go to college. It was something along those lines.
Also, what was very interesting at this point that we still deal with today in the product is that each level that you're at, you are only dealing with vocabulary, grammar, scenarios that a child or whatever at developmental age you were.
Yeah, that structure remains the same today, from the very beginning. of like where you're interacting and why these are the places you're interacting. It's an issue of delimiting the vocabulary you're engaged with and the types of interactions you're engaged with. It's just that we changed what that interaction is like. But one of the interesting things about that version is that you had a family, right? I mean, you're not an orphan. So you had a family. So the idea is that you'd have, mom and dad, and you had twin siblings. So you had a brother and sister who were twins, and they were older than you. And a big chunk of the game, a big chunk of the game was them talking to you, and then you seeing them say stuff. So it was still very passive, because you didn't have you weren't really building a story or doing stuff that much. It was a lot more like you were observing other people do things. So like you'd go to the supermarket, and the story would go along the lines of, like, you had a character, so you could move and so on, but it was like a forced move. You had to do certain things to fill this. It was like a theater.
You couldn't choose.
No, you didn't have choices here. It was like a theater play where you have to follow and you have to watch this. Now it will be far more interesting than other ways of learning English, but or languages. But it was still too passive.
And you ended up changing it yet again.
Yeah.
To what this time?
So after a few months, this would have been like maybe September, October of 2017. The main difference there was that your character now had more choice. So what I realized is that we could build a product that was just a game in the sense of like an open world where you could freely move between one scenario and the other.
Wait, did you have this idea of you could learn what you wanted to learn?
Yeah. And that's something that was missing in the previous version, where it was just a theater play and so on. Because even though there were many scenarios, so the game happens in the idea was the game to happen in a city. And even though you'd go to different scenarios, the order was predetermined.
Right.
So you'd go here and then here and then here.
Right. That's you were still sticking with the same idea as last time, where you wanted them to learn the most common things first, which is going to be house objects, basically. And then you go to the city, and then you go to the school, and you're just increasingly learning new terms.
You're progressively expanding the types of things you're engaged with in terms of vocabulary and grammar, and context and narratives and stories. That structure remains the same, because like the idea, because it's a basic hierarchy,
right?
And it's a basic hierarchy and a basic integration of like you're building stuff, you're adding stuff, you're summing it up,
right?
So that remains true. It's just that the solution wasn't very good, you know.
No, this is the one that I worked on, and we worked on this for a while. How long did we work on it? At least over a year, didn't we?
So this was about September or October that we made this change. And again, I mean, the main point of this change is to give the user more agency, so they could choose which scenario they were going to. So I think by this point, there is no more like growing up stuff. I think it was just like you had a character, and then your character would go
to different
things,
places and do different quests.
And the quests, they were like activities, like you'd have to do things, like you go to like a restaurant and you'd work as a waiter. So then you'd get you'd have to go to the table and get the customer's order. And the customer would be like the computer, right? But you'd get it to interact.
Right.
It's a simulation of an interaction. So they would give the what they wanted to eat. It would appear on your notes what the request was. You'd have to go back to the chef and tell them, oh, this is what the customer at table 5 wants. Then the chef eventually gives you the plate. You have to deliver it. So all of that would be written and spoken, so that the student, the user, would be able to see this like real life situations.
Yeah, we had this actually built at the time. So I was the designer, and I designed an entire city for us to use for this product. The problem was that we eventually came to the conclusion that it was a problem of knowing where to go and knowing what to choose. Because even though we gave them more choice as to what they can do and where they can do it, you had no idea where to go. It was very confusing.
Yeah, that was one of the one big problem of that product is that we didn't have a very good structure on how to build those activities. And later on, this version of this open world where you can choose where to go and so on, we created like an elaborate backstory
Yes.
to it.
Oh,
Maybe
yes.
we can do a video just on that backstory. But it was a really cool backstory. But the problem is that we were focusing on the wrong things. So there was far too much focus on this backstory. There was far too much focus on a large number of quests. By the time we abandoned this idea or the solution to the problem, right? Because during this whole time, we were trying to solve a problem of how do we get, people in Brazil, in Latin America, to learn English more efficiently.
Right.
Like that's the issue that we're trying to solve. And so going through these different versions, it was just like trying to figure out.
We were dealing with things we shouldn't have been dealing with. It
Yeah.
wasn't the essential things that we eventually changed to. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that?
So what we changed after this version is that the product was supposed to be like 4 things. So one of them was the game, and so this is the more interactive part. And you can think of this as it's higher in terms of complexity and in terms of integration. Like this is more advanced. You're building more concretes, you're having more advanced interactions. And then the other 3 aspects, which were reading, writing, and grammar, they were supposed to be the supplementary material. And so when I started working on this would have been about March of 2019, right? So we're jumping from, let's say, September of 2017
17, yeah.
to March of 2019, so a year and a half just working on this particular version. And like the version worked. There was a backstory, there was all kinds of functionalities, and maybe it would be good for us to post those pictures on Facebook and Instagram as that version,
Right.
currently that versions that
Right.
we're eventually going to revive and build and so on, but currently that versions.
They don't look very good though. Just
Well, at the time they looked awesome.
yeah.
'Cause at
but
the
we
time-
were developing our skills in all of these
Yeah,
areas.
yeah. A big thing that happened in those first 2.5 years, 2 years and 3 months, which is from the start of the idea in January of 2017
Mm-hmm.
until March of 2019, which is when we kind of ended the video game solution and we changed to an app solution, because we realized that the reading, writing, and grammar, and then vocabulary and listening, that's the essential, that's the most important part, and not so much the interactions in the video game.
Mm-hmm.
Because once the student has this ground knowledge, this base of reading, writing, vocabulary, and so on, they can understand the language. Now it's the time to apply in something more complex, which would be doing stuff, interacting with the computer, interacting with these computer characters, and so on. And so we shifted from a computer game to building an app and then having this emphasis on reading and writing.
And that was a major pivot for us.
Yeah, that was the biggest iteration.
There were a few more iterations that came afterwards, but that's what it is for now.